It's Bucket. Mob farms. An absolute classic way to farm resources. All the Mods 10 includes a variety of different mobs to allow us to farm an even larger variety of resources, and even more powerful tools to do so. In today's video, we're going to explore some of these options that will make your mob farm extremely easy to set up, how you can make the most out of your mob farm, and why mob farms are truly one of the most overpowered resource generators in all the Mods 10. We're going to be using Apothec spawners and a 1-block tower to spawn mobs for our farm. The first thing we're going to need is to make an area for our mobs to spawn. By default, our spawners will have a spawn radius of 4. To make sure we make use of all of this area, horizontally, this will mean that we will need a 9x9 area. Vertically, we would need 4 blocks between the bottommost spawner and the floor. Above the spawner, mobs will only be able to spawn at the height of the top of the spawner. So if your topmost spawner spawns a mob that's 2 blocks tall, we'll need a 2-block gap between the top spawner and the ceiling. How deep the box is will depend on how many spawners you plan on having. For this, we're going to make a box 14 blocks deep. Now I find the easiest way to build your chamber is rather than building walls, we're going to dig out that space instead. But first, we're going to set up our spawners. Our first spawner is going to be 4 blocks deep. I'm going to go into detail about our spawners later on, but at the very least, make sure you use a comparator on your spawner to enable redstone activation. Then for our redstone, we're going to be using red alloy wire. For this wire, note that there are 2 different ingots that you can use to craft it. I would suggest using the red alloy ingot from the mod More Red. We're going to run our wire from the spawner all the way to the bottom side of what's going to be the ceiling of your mob farm. On top of this block, we're going to place a lever. This is how we're going to turn the spawners on and off. Now to dig our hole. For this, the easiest way would be to use a destruction gadget. Holding G, we can adjust our area and we're going to clear out our space around our spawner. Now we're going to fill in the ceiling. Realistically, you can use any solid block to block light, unless you plan on augmenting your spawners. I like to use tinted glass so that I can see what's happening. The cheapest tinted glass you can use is tinted glass from Mob Grinding Utilities. To help me place it down, I'm going to be using a construction stick. You'll have to set a keybind to bring up the options. In the options, you can set the restriction to left, right. Then, with the glass in our offhand, we can use the construction stick to add tinted glass as the top layer. On top, I'm going to be setting up a kill chamber that's 1 block wide. Here we're going to place down a cog block and a mob masher. Place a lever on the side of the cog block, then in the mob masher, add any upgrades that you have. For the most part, you're going to want sharpness and looting, and you can have up to 10 of each. Do note that if you have big mobs in your mob farm, like ghasts or slimes, you will need a bigger kill chamber. And to do that, all we'd have to do is add more mob mashers. But Bucket, how are we going to get the mobs from down there to up here? Well, to do that, we're going to use Ars Nouveau to move them by creating a hole that's going to teleport them to our kill chamber. Right, so we're going to move all our mobs by having them fall through your Ars hole. Didn't you say you're using Ars to make a hole? To make an Ars portal, you're going to need to get into Ars Nouveau. You're going to need a full source jar, a warp scroll, and 36 of any kind of source stone. If you don't have any of this set up, here's a quick rundown. Warp scrolls can sometimes be found in loot chests or in Ars structures. Ars structures are also where you'll find source stone if you don't want to craft it yourself. The Nexus Tower and Portal Ruins are fairly common places to find source stone. If you're lucky, the Nexus Tower also has a rare chance to spawn a room full of Ars loot. Within it, you'll find a source jar, which you will need, a scrying scroll, which we can turn into blank parchment to craft a warp scroll. If for some reason we need more, there's also a Mage Bloom seed there, and this is what we'll need to grow Mage Bloom fiber to craft more scrolls. And there's also a source gem block under the armor stand. Now back to our mob farm. With your warp scroll, stand in your kill chamber and shift right click to save the location to your scroll. Do not right click with your scroll after this or you will end up using it. If you have endermen in your farm, you'll also need an ender inhibitor to prevent them from teleporting away. The range on these is 8 blocks, so we'll need one at the top, and I'm also going to be placing one in the ground at the bottom of our mob farm. Now with our source stone, we're going to replace the bottom layer of the wall to build our portal frame. Do note as well that this portal frame doesn't need corners, so we're just going to be filling in 8 on either side. Now just to be clear, we're about to create a portal that leads to our kill chamber, which is a little dangerous if we're ever going to need to re-enter this area to make any adjustments to our spawners. To work around this and prevent any accidents, we can use reverse ethereal glass. With this glass, mobs will go through this glass, but you won't, meaning it'll work very nicely as a safety net so we don't accidentally teleport ourselves into our kill chamber. And before we finish our glass layer, we'll activate the portal. Place down your filled source jar and throw your warp scroll into the portal frame. Once that's done, we can close it up. Now we can wall up our kill chamber. You need at least a 3-block gap to fit the tallest mobs that I'm going to be recommending. Last but not least, place the biggest chest you can afford to store your loot. To collect loot, the cheapest option is going to be an item collector from the item collectors mod, but personally I would recommend the item collector from Just Dire Things, as we can have it activate every tick. The Just Dire Things item collector will need to have the area configured with the settings at the top. I'm going to be selecting our whole kill chamber. And I would also recommend having the Just Dire Things experience holder to collect the experience from our mob farm. Similarly, we'll have to configure the area as well well, turn on collect and turn off redstone control. To craft these, you'll need some materials from Just Dire Things. Materials from Just Dire Things are acquired via goo spreading. Just like how you'd need a higher tier pickaxe to mine higher tier materials, you would need a higher tier goo to produce higher tier Just Dire Things materials. After crafting the goo, you'll notice an icon on the block which indicates what we need to use to feed it in order for it to start working. So with my layout here, these blocks, when placed on their minimum tiered goo, will produce these materials. Once the conversion is complete, mine the ore and smelt it. For us, we would need ferrocore for the item collector and blaze gold for the experience holder. And within your chest, ideally you want to have the highest stack upgrades you can afford and void upgrades. Don't be afraid to have multiple of these, as these are what you're going to be using to stop your chest from overflowing, which is very important. If your chest overflows, items will keep piling up in your world, and you know about it when your FPS drops to 0. In general, you're going to want to void items that you don't want or items that don't stack. Generally, I like to have a void upgrade set to filter by tag. From JEI, I can drag any armor into it, then I can select the armors tag to filter out any armor. Then I could also look up something like a pickaxe to filter out any tools or swords. You may want to add more to your filters depending on what mobs you have in your mob farm. For example, if you have witches, you can add potions to your tag filter. For a second void filter, I like to have apotheosis gems and iron spell scrolls. Ideally, this chest should serve as a temporary storage, and you should have items moving into your main storage. Then you can simply add a void upgrade and set it to void overflow. This will make it so your items will only take up one slot each and void any excess, which essentially stops your storage from ever overflowing as long as you're also voiding items that don't stack. Once everything's set up, switch on your mob masher and your spawners and you're good to go. This is also a reminder that if you have endermen in your farm, dirt blocks do not make a good material for your mob farm. Also, if you wanted to get rid of some of these particles, you want to go into your video settings, hit particles. These white particles, you want to look for Minecraft poof. These hearts from the mobs, you want to look for Minecraft damage indicator. And these particles come from the spawners, you want to look for Minecraft flame and Minecraft smoke. Let's talk about spawners. By default, spawners you find in the world will be apothic spawners. You can mine them with the pickaxe that is Silk Touch, or you can pick them up by using a cardboard box from Mechanism. These spawners are incredibly powerful and are key to our mob farms. We can have the spawner spawn a specific mob if we use the spawn egg on it. And on top of that, if you hold control, we can see the spawner's stats. By using certain items on our spawner, we can change these stats and its properties. If you want a list, you can search up monster spawner in JEI. Clicking on this will show you all the different options to modify your spawner. Alternatively, there's also a quest that will show you these as well. Now, I'm not going to go over all of them, but here's a quick rundown of some of the more important ones that you'll need. A redstone comparator will enable redstone control. This is how we're able to turn our spawners on and off. Wool will stop your mobs from making noise. We can change the time it takes for mobs to spawn. We can change the minimum spawn time using sugar and the maximum spawn time using clocks. Bringing both of these down as much as possible will get your mobs spawning more often, and ultimately, this is how you get the most out of your spawners. Fermented spider eyes will increase how many mobs can spawn at a time. Ghast tears will increase the maximum total amount of mobs that can be spawned at one time. These next ones are a bit expensive, but are definitely worth looking into when you can because they will help your mob farm a lot. Echo shards will increase the amount of loot dropped by mobs. Normally, a player would need to be within a certain range for spawners to activate. Another star will remove this requirement as long as the chunk is loaded. These next two can technically be worked around, but are definitely nice to have when you need them. Chorus fruit will remove the AI from mobs. That means that flying mobs will no longer fly and endermen won't teleport. Your mobs essentially just become soulless bodies. Some mobs will only spawn with the right conditions, whether it's a light condition or the correct biome. A conduit will ignore any spawning conditions. So how do we farm specific mobs? The easiest way is to get spawn eggs. Easiest way to get spawn eggs is by using mob swabs from mob grinding utilities. It's as simple as using the mob swab on a mob. Then with that swab, we can craft it with a seed and a bucket of experience to craft GM chicken feed. Feed that to a chicken and you have a spawn egg. The tough part tends to be the bucket of experience, but there are many decent early game methods to get these. The experience holder from Just Dire Things, which we've mentioned earlier. The benefit of this being that we can also use this at a mob farm to collect XP. For this, you can store your experience and then right click with a bucket. Make sure you're just holding the one bucket and not a stack. XP obelisk from Ender.io. The benefit of this one is that the materials required aren't as rare. For example, it doesn't require ender pearls or blaze powder. With the XP obelisk, you have to store some levels into it and have it configured to push into a tank. XP Drain Singularity Tank. This one is probably the easiest to understand. Stand on it to fill it with XP and right click it with a bucket. A backpack with a tank upgrade and a magnet upgrade is also one of the cheaper alternatives. The magnet requires 2 ender pearls, but overall, this setup doesn't require anything from the nether. We can collect experience from mining and slaying mobs, then you just need to place down your backpack and right click it with a bucket. Having access to buckets of experience also allows you to craft the other chicken feeds. Nutritious chicken feed will give you a golden egg. Using this on dirt produces delightful dirt. This will spawn passive mobs over time. GM chicken feed cursed will give you a rotten egg. Using this on dirt produces dreadful dirt, which will spawn hostile mobs over time. This will be very useful if you're having trouble finding certain mobs. Do note that this dirt will burn if exposed to sunlight. Otherwise, in general, light will stop mobs from spawning. Both kinds of dirt can also have their spawns accelerated with a redstone pulse. Something to note is that delightful dirt will also spawn grass and flowers, which actually end up blocking mobs from spawning. For the same reason, an Ars portal placed on top will actually stop mobs from spawning. However, Ars portals work just fine with dreadful dirt. Do note, of course, that not every spawn egg can be used on spawners. However, that doesn't mean that we can't make mob spawners from these mobs. But first, what are some good mobs to have in your mob farm? First and foremost is the chicken. Why a chicken? Having a chicken spawner just means that you don't have to run around looking for chickens to feed your chicken feed to. If you have a lot of spawners, this just makes life easier. Of course, in a mob farm, you want to farm certain mobs for important drops that only they can give. For example, Endermen for ender pearls, blazes for blaze rods, and wither skeletons for wither skeleton skulls. However, there are also some mobs that drop some more general resources. Witches give quite a variety of resources, but in particular, one of the best sources for redstone. In addition, spider eyes and sugar can be very helpful for augmenting spawners in your mob farm. The king of mob farm resources is the cave creeper. As you can imagine, these can be found underground in caves, but within a spawner, it seems that they will only spawn at a Y level of 62 or lower. Cave creepers will drop diamonds, emeralds, raw iron, raw gold, and stone. Ancient knights are a mob from iron spells. They're particularly good because they drop netherite scrap. They are also one of the few mobs that will drop cinder essence, which will be needed to craft some of the ATM style components. Ancient knights can be commonly found as an armor pile. Mining the armor pile will spawn the ancient knight. In the overworld, you can find one at the top of a pyromancer tower. Otherwise, these can be found in the nether, in the ancient battlegrounds, or in the big iron spell structure known as the citadel. Be warned, because these things hit hard. Conduits can be crafted with nautilus shells and Heart of the Sea, and both of these can be found with mobs. You can actually get Heart of the Sea from farming seahorses. These mobs are from the mod Living Things, and are mostly found in ocean biomes. Nautilus shells can be dropped from deeplings, deepling anglers, and deepling brutes, and also beach creepers. Drowned also have the chance to spawn with the Nautilus shell, which is a little different, but is honestly good enough for what we need them for. Don't you think that that's everything? If you're into occultism allows you to summon various mobs which basically exist for their resources. Man, I wish the Elder Guardian dropped Heart of the Sea. Man, it would make sense if the Warden dropped Echo Shards. And there is actually something better than a mob swap. The Ender Lead was recently added to Apothic Enchanting. The upgraded variant is the Occult Ender Lead, and this allows us to pick up most mobs and put them directly into spawners, meaning we don't have to bother with trying to make a spawn egg. Now earlier I did mention that some spawn eggs will tell you that you can't use these on spawners. However, this doesn't apply to Ender Leads. So what mobs can you use Ender Leads on? Using the Occult Ender Lead, we can make spawners for the Warden, Souls from Forbidden Arcanus, Netherite Monstrosity, the Bee Queen from the Bumble Zone. Wait, can we make a spawner with productive bees? Yes, you can. No, not really. You can make one, but they'll just spawn dead bees. But just so you know, from what I've tested, this doesn't work on the Wither, Mimics, Pig Glitches, and it doesn't seem to work from any of the bosses from Eternal Starlight, Twilight Forest, or any of the other Cataclysm bosses. And of course, the same concepts with mob farms can be used elsewhere as well. For example, Dreadful Dirt is one of the best ways to farm Apotheosis gear. By using Dreadful Dirt, we're essentially just accelerating natural spawns. And if we want to farm specific mobs, we can always filter out mobs by using an interdiction pylon with a mob filter. At any point, you can also turn your mob farm into an XP farm. At the minimum, all you would need is a sword with a Knowledge of the Ages enchantment on it. The Knowledge of the Ages enchantment turns any mob drops into experience. Of course, any other buffs or enchantments that increase your loot will also help with this. And if you really stack your experience gain, there are a few other things that will make your mob farm easier if you didn't already know about them. We do use a bit of redstone in our farm, and for some designs, it can be nice to be able to use redstone wirelessly. For that, we can use redstone links from Create. Using any wrench, we can right-click a redstone link to switch it to receiving mode, and we can link them together by assigning items to the two slots. Another redstone link with matching slots can then wirelessly transmit a redstone signal. We also use a fair bit of glass with different properties. Now, there is a glass mod that can do all of the things that our different kinds of glass will do. It's also very pretty. Crystallix is a mod for colorful glass that can be configured to take on different properties. By default, the keybinds to change these properties are Z, X, C, V. To change the properties of your glass, you will need a Crystallix wand. It is a little bit expensive, but I may have convinced them to make it cheaper. That's right, I'm connected. Shadeless mode toggles the shade, which is kind of like the shadow that the glass gives. Reinforced mode can make the glass witherproof. Light mode can make the glass emit light or block light. And ghost mode can change what is allowed to pass through the glass. Once you select your properties with the Crystallix wand, you can right click to change one block or shift right click to change a lot of blocks. The glass also comes in a variety of bright colors in 3 different variants. If you don't know guys, this is a one-man show. So if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Feel free to join the Discord Discord if you have any questions. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.